Okay, this is the story, history, adventure, and intention for the two characters in the Dungeons and Dragons campaign I've been running with friends and family. This is for characters Naeris and Esmeray. Um, I guess to start off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Esmeray, her character, and then probably tell you a lot of Naeris's story, and then jump back to uh, Esmeray. Um, but I got to put a pin in things because I'm going to try to tell it in a way that I was thinking the characters were going to unfold it and uncover it and discover it as the game progressed. Um, Thus, when you get the realization of the connections and their collective stories, you uh, might have a moment of aha or appreciation of the reveal that it would have caused for the individual characters. Um, so Esmeray, for all intents and purposes, doesn't know who her family is. She was born in the wilderness. She remembers being raised by wolves, by other animals and creatures. Her bestest of friends have been animals and nature. And as society has grown and expanded in the world, so has Esmeray become closer to meeting people. Through her life, she's occasionally come across people, and as people have expanded out into what she would consider to be her home, she's become more and more accustomed to them to the point where she started wandering through towns and cities to see if people would recognize her, or better put, not recognize her. Um, and she didn't get any kind of resistance. Yeah, people would look at her and be like, oh, who's that, or what race is she? But the world is full of lots of mysterious people for mysterious reasons, and in a lot of parts of the world, mysterious means dangerous. And so, if you don't know someone, there's no reason to try to get to know them. For the most part, she's been left alone, which she both kind of likes and dislikes. She likes that no one meddles in her affairs, but she dislikes the fact that her only family are creatures that she can't fully empathize with her. And so she goes out looking for a sort of family, as well as a means of completing her ambitions. And her ambitions, I'll tell you a little bit about later. But that's essentially Esmeray. She is a druid, as close to a witch as I could get and fathom and put together. And she worships the Moonweaver, and yeah, is a very powerful star shaping uh, uh, being who has done, in the early parts of the campaign, has done probably more damage than all the other members of the company put together. Very powerful, very mysterious, and her backstory uh, just lined up perfectly with Naeris. So I'll tell you a little bit about Naeris now and then come back to Esmeray. So Naeris is an elvish woman who comes from a very notable family in Singorn. Her parents had retired to the Feywild, where their family had originally come from, and as a result, she has been on her own for quite some time now. Growing up with this kind of notability in family and being surrounded with other people of note and nobility, she was able to observe politics and power at its very core through the sociability aspect of a turn of phrase or the dropping of a hint of knowledgeable information, of knowing something that you probably shouldn't. And as a result, her understanding of knowledge being power was absolute. She, as a result, found in the library at Singorn, in a section of the library she should not have been in, and was only in by her designs and ambitions, was able to perform a ritual whose effects she didn't fully understand. The end result is more or less what she wanted, which was to be able to obtain knowledge at a terrifying rate. The cost, though, was her soul, and a few more things that she wasn't aware of. So with her soul gone, she began just devouring information in the library. But soon this hunger couldn't really be satiated anymore, and it didn't matter how much she learned, she was never happy, never satisfied. In fact, she couldn't consume things at a fast enough rate that anything that wasn't learning was quickly dismissed, and usually catastrophic or violent manners. People would approach her and she would just rip their heads off verbally for bothering her. As a result, she kind of got this reputation in Singorn for being brilliant but unapproachable. Just don't even bother. Don't talk to her. Doesn't matter if you're a teacher, if you're one of the operators of the library or the temples. Just leave her be. And after finishing the majority of the texts in academic portions of the library, she started branching into more philosophical ones, and learning about humanity and compassion drove her into a sort of inner despair, learning about the dichotomy of things like justice and mercy. And even though her soul was gone, she began to feel like that was a mistake. She began to want for something more than the nothingness that is knowledge. That knowledge on its own, knowledge without direction or purpose or being, is trivial in its nature. So she began looking for relationship, for family, for something other than whatever it was that couldn't satiate this hunger. The problem was that she had already alienated everyone in Singorn, and so nobody wanted to talk to her. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with her. So she put down her books, picked up some musical instruments, and started to play music at nearby taverns and pubs to entertain the obligatory travelers, the people who were not of Singorn, who didn't have this conception of her as being unapproachable and bad. And she began to soothe their wounds and their ailments from the road with song and with laughter and with some sort of bolstering of positivity that maybe her soul didn't quite feel, but she definitely wanted to feel again. And so she heard stories of people on the road, and even though they were all very temporary, they were temporarily her friends, her family, even for a night. And I don't mean in like the oldest profession in history sort of way, but in a you've recently lost a loved one, cry on my shoulder and I'll sing you a song to ease your pain, to take your pain from you. And then they were gone the next day, and her pain and loneliness returned until the next night, when she found new people to sing to comfort, to heal, and to send on their way. And so she goes to Whitestone, hearing that it's a holy city, a place where she might be able to find out some information about how she can maybe get her soul back, or things that people can do to recompense with the with people who have done such tragedies. Um, and um, Esmeray happens to be wandering through Whitestone because it's fairly close to her home, and she's more or less just looking for a friend, looking for a family. And so, with the two kind of with the same intention, the same desire, um, it seemed very obvious that they would unite and tie up. The thing about it, though, is that the extra details of their backstory um, made it all kind of fall together. And I didn't realize this exactly when they were telling me about their backstory, telling me about their desires. It more or less came as I was researching the possibility of the implementation of their backstories. So, for instance, Naeris had to have some way of selling her soul. So I looked through betrayer gods in Exandria and found one that best suited tortured and suffering soul, and that was Torog, the crawling king. Um, and I looked through it and I was like, okay, well, Torog wouldn't necessarily care about an individual soul. He kind of wants more or less the mass destruction of slavery. A single person's soul isn't really worth him coming or trying to attempt to come onto the plane to acquire. And so I created an NPC to have done that for him, a disciple of Torog, um, whose name would be the Harbinger of Torog, who would be a mortal man, though a warlock and incredibly empowered with Torog's capabilities to essentially perform his will. And so the Harbinger would gather souls, like lots of souls, and bring them all kind of at once to Torog as an offering, which Torog would be grateful for and accept and bestow upon him more and more power. And so this Harbinger of Torog had taken Naeris' soul and had used it in various kinds of experiments. There is, bloodletting magic, where as you shed blood, you can increase the power or magnitude of a particular attack. And he was more or less playing around with soul letting, where as a soul became tortured, he would try to use the essence of what was lost in its torturing to perform various deeds and acts. And so the party was going to have to go and find this person, this Harbinger of Torog, and was going to have to confront him. And they were going to have to kill him, or in the very least make him leave his fortress, where they would find Naeris' soul, and it would be trapped in some sort of invention that was both mechanical and magical in nature. And while looking through papers and such on his desk, actually no, they would have to kill him because of what would be happening next. He couldn't have gotten away, but essentially after he dies and they start going through things in a study to uncover more information about him, they find papers and journals just kind of detailing out what went on with the ritual of getting the soul and putting it in the state that it's in, and how to retrieve it. And they find a temporary means of taking it from this thing and putting it into this other thing smaller that Naeris can wear around her neck. So even though her soul is still outside of her body, she can still use it, still have it with her. It's in her possession. And then eventually find a way to bind it back to her, and essentially cast some spell to tie the fate of her body to the fate of the prison of her soul, so that when she died, the prison would release the soul, very similar to the body dying. But it would turn Naeris from a bard into a very powerful sorceress of using soul-letting magic, where she could hurt her soul to cast spells. Very much so, like bloodletting would be for a physical attack. I know the bloodletting also becomes magical because of the physical, and I was going to do something with the opposite of soul letting and having some of it be physical damage, like a physical impact to the body. And so that was more or less the arc for Naeris in getting her soul back. The problem, though, was going to come about because of Esmeray. So this is where things get really fun for their stories. So Esmeray wasn't born. She doesn't have parents, properly speaking. She was more or less created. She did not come from a womb through any sort of natural childbirth. She is, in the basic essence, a summon. And what had happened is that her creator was some scientist guy who was making a whole bunch of radically abominable things, and Esmeray was the result of one of these things. And what this scientist had done, he was messing around with the essences of the deities, so the divine gods as well as the abyssal gods. He was combining essences to find out what would happen, almost like mixing heroin and cocaine together to see which one would win. And so he found some of the best results when he mixed betrayer and divine gods essences together of completely opposing force. So in the Calamity, the Moonweaver, who Esmeray worships, for the lack of a better word, the Moonweaver's counterpart was Torog, the Crawling King, the owner of Naeris' soul. And the scientists had essentially taken essence of Torog and essence of the Moonweaver, fused them together, and a bunch of abominations had come out as a result. Creatures and beings and entities that the party would likely have to fight after discovering them to rid the world of their destructive force, and learning more and more about the Moonweaver and Torog. And it would be essential for them to do these things because Esmeray's goal, her desire, was to kill the Moonweaver. And this isn't something that I made. This is something that Erin wanted. The player, Erin, wanted to kill the Moonweaver and take her place. And so it would have been revealed during this raid of the Harbinger of Torog's abode, his mansion of mayhem, that for lack of better terminology, Esmeray's parents would be Torog, the Crawling King, and the Moonweaver. But that's not all, because the reason that the reason that it wasn't all is a bunch of things were made by this guy. A bunch of terrible abominations, terrible creatures and things that embodied a blasphemed unity that never was meant to be, that has never chosen to be, but was forced. And it wasn't until this scientist started playing around with soul letting that he started to see results. This this scientist was the harbinger of Torog. The owner of Naeris' soul was the same person who had created Esmeray. In fact, he had used the pain and torturing of Naeris' soul to harness the power between the Moonweaver and Torog to create Esmeray. Essentially, in as close as a fashion as could be in this manner, would make Naeris and Esmeray sisters. Sisters to each other that they did not know they had, that they had both been longing for and desiring for. But this would have brought a bunch of problems and conflicts to the group and to the two, because the Moonweaver is essentially the god overseeing elves in Singorn. It is the god that Naeris grew up worshipping, believing in, respecting. And Esmeray is unknowingly trying to kill her own mother. And so it was going to be a conflict between Naeris and Esmeray, because Naeris is going to have to choose her mother-in-law, stepmother. I don't know how it would work out, but she would have to choose her god or her sister in a fight, because Esmeray was really set on attacking and taking over the place of the Moonweaver and becoming the new Moonweaver. It's very similar to how Vecna became Vecna. And Esmeray was going to be kind of torn, because Torog is her father, and Torog wants Naeris' soul. And so there's going to be this beautiful conflict between the two of choosing family over ambition, of giving up on their deepest desires to provide something to the other one that would destroy one of their wants. If they both became sisters, then Esmeray could not kill the Moonweaver. And Naeris could not get her soul back. But if one of them yielded to the other, one of them would be happy and the other one would almost be destroyed in their mission, in their endeavor. And so I was really, really excited to see how all this was going to play out, if it was going to play out, because the dice are really what tell us if the story succeeds or not. But that was essentially the plan, is that through their joint efforts of getting back Naeris' soul and learning more about the Moonweaver and Torog, the Crawling King, and who it is that had birthed or brought Esmeray into the world, because Naeris would have helped kill this Harbinger of Torog, but the Harbinger of Torog is the one who created Esmeray, and Esmeray is looking to destroy her gods. So you also get this funny line that if Esmeray had chosen to see the Harbinger as her dad, as opposed to Torog, because the Harbinger is the one who enforced the act to bring her there, versus Torog, who was an unwilling participant, then something like that could have unfolded, where Esmeray is upset that the group just killed her father, maybe her adopted father, but father nonetheless. And as a result, tried to stop Naeris from getting her soul, or demanded that she help her kill the Moonweaver, which would have gone against Naeris and her commitment to helping people. The Moonweaver is a bastion of help and hope and love and peace, and to attack that would be to attack Naeris' core values for who she is. So there was all sorts of twists and turns that could have been taken, that would have been taken, at the player's discretion, at the player's choice through the playing of that character. Um, and so that I don't know how exactly it would have turned out, because human decision has to be involved, and then the rolling of the dice. But it has continued to be incredible as I roll dice in the background that you guys don't even know about. As I am preparing things, and each time that I try to force something in a story or in a series of events, I will break out of that and roll some dice, and I'll pre-establish this means this, this means this, this means this, and I'll roll the dice, and it'll be straight odds across the board, and I keep rolling into the story that I really want to tell, which is either indicating to me that it's some sort of terrible fate or prophetic epiphany about the intentions of the game and what it's maybe supposed to mean to you as people, as well as your characters as your own sorts of creations. So it was interesting that Naeris and Esmeray were so closely tied together and then left the campaign at the same time. Their fates were always intertwined, and them leaving at the same time, while you might say is chance, I can't look at it from that perspective. I have to see it as something more. And the way I was explaining it to Ammon was very similar to the dichotomy of justice and mercy, especially if you take a look at stories like Les Miserables, where you have Jean Valjean and Javert, Jean Valjean playing the part of mercy and Javert playing the part of justice, where Javert wants to take Jean Valjean back to prison. It is his right, his job, his duty to do that, and he's right. That's what justice says. But mercy says that Jean Valjean still needs to help people, that without him to help people, more innocent people will end up hurt. So it's his way of trying to appease justice by delivering mercy. Justice doesn't see it that way, so there's this immense conflict between the two. And mercy even tries to deliver an option. Jean Valjean tries to say, hey, look, I'm a man of my word. If you let me go and take care of these people, I will come back to you, to your jail, to your prison, and I'll turn myself in. And justice is like, why should I have to wait? You're here right now. I'll just take you now. And there's a fight. Jean Valjean wins and runs away. And the big conflict in that story takes place toward the end, where Javert finds himself caught. And he's in a place of essential anarchy and rebellion, where justice doesn't seem to have a place. And so he is put before Jean Valjean as essentially to be his judge, jury, and executioner. He has the ability to kill Javert with no repercussion. No one else knows about Jean Valjean. No one else is chasing Jean Valjean. He can kill this emblem of justice and remain mercy for the remainder of his life. But that's not merciful. That's not what the character is about. To do that would have been the just thing for him to do. Wouldn't have been the merciful thing for him to do. And so he does the only thing that mercy can do, and that's show mercy. He lets him go. And this destroys this destroys Javert. Because now Javert is a creature of circumstance, not a creator of circumstance. He is a creature of a mercy. He is only alive now because mercy allowed it. And being a being of justice, he knows he should be dead. And so the only thing that he can do is writhe in agony and kill himself. And that's exactly what he does. He goes to a bridge and he is battling with his inner demons of why he's still alive. He shouldn't be alive. My heart is stone and still it trembles. The world I have known is often shadows. He does not recognize the world anymore because he is no longer just a being of justice. He is now the prophet of mercy, and he can't take it, and so he kills himself. Soon thereafter, Jean Valjean dies, because while he's expressing and showing mercy and carrying a wounded soldier through the sewers of Paris while he himself is injured, all sorts of stuff from the sewers gets into his wounds, and he becomes very sick with an assortment of things, and he dies himself. And during their confrontation between Jean Valjean and Javert, they tell each other, or Javert tells him, I am from the same streets as you. I was born alongside you. We were born in the same place at the same time with the same people, took two different paths, and now we're in conflict with each other. And in the end, they die. Even though split apart physically, they die around the same time. And it's poetic in the destructive nature of their relationship. And something like that had been created between the Naeris and Esmeray characters that I had nothing to do with. And that's why it was so exciting for me, because after they told me what their intentions were and what their desires were, and I sat everyone's stories down and was reading them all, I was like, wait a second, this one and this one line up, and this one and this one line up, and this one and this one line up, so much that I didn't have to tell much more of the story. The story was more or less finding the piece that connects the individual points, and as someone who loves to tell stories, this became very easy and obvious to do. So that by the end of the first week of planning, I had everyone's stories so well defined and locked in that I almost cried, because if I take a look at the timing of how we're doing our campaign and how long and how much we're getting done with each time we get together, this is going to take years for everyone to realize, to appreciate, to come to terms with. And it's like me seeing the best movie in the world 3 years before everyone else, and I can't tell anyone about it. And I just gotta sit and wait for y'all to catch up. And that's what excites me so much, because this Naeris and Esmeray story is so conflicted and beautiful and poetic and terrible and heart-wrenching that I am so sad that they won't be able to experience those aha moments of, oh, of hope and realization and happiness, followed by immense despair and conflict, so much that their enjoyment and happiness will be completely undermined by the realization of that moment. And that to go from what they thought was such a low to an incredible high to an even deeper low, it was going to be unfathomably exquisite. And I'm sad that we won't be able to go on that adventure with them. But likewise, I'm still excited for the rest of you on your journey, because you each have equally, if not more exciting stories of your own, of conflict, of duality, of purpose, of love and hate, of conflict and resolution, of choice, of fates that you will be left to determine not just your own, but someone else's in the group. And I am so happy that y'all can, continued with your stories despite these two leaving, because your joint stories, your backgrounds, the things you don't know yet, are really incredible. Like, I'm tempted to write all this down into a book and try to sell the book as fan fiction, because it is powerful and it is intense, and I am excited and nervous for you all to play it, because again, it comes down to choice and dice rolls. And I hope I hope the story continues to play itself out. Anyway, that's essentially the story I gave to Ammon when he was up visiting. But I wanted y'all to be aware that the things that are coming, I'm trying to lead you to. But will be, in the end, your decision as to what happens to your characters and to each other's characters. And I'm excited for you to get there. Anyway, I hope we have a good game tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll have everything set up in time and make it extra fun for you. But we'll talk to y'all then. See you.